You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies.
Welcome, fellow travelers, to the Good Book Club. We ask good questions, or just questions actually, to keep the conversation of God alive, and we're here in a new location.
Yeah, I really like this location.
It's a really nice setup.
It's thank you. It's my living room, so we have more breathing space, head space, and everything,
A lot of space.
which is amazing. And we got these nice cushions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now this time we're level, because the other times I was like
All the way down there.
Always looking up to you.
It's like,
Oh.
father boy. That's from another episode we've done before, if you want to reference to that.
That was a very fun moment. So anyway, we are now at John chapter 8.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Which is awesome. So, as per usual, let's quickly recap John 1 to 7.
You want to speed it?
I'll try. John 1, we are introduced to Jesus and John the Baptist, and then it says he is the light of the world. Wait, what happened else in John 1? Oh wait, didn't he get his first... It was the prologue, and he got his first disciples, first 4, in John 1. John 2 turns water into wine, and also he heals a centurion's child from a distance. John 3, it's Nicodemus. And John 4, it is also him talking to the Samaritan woman. And what happened in John 5? It was him healing a lame man that was paralyzed for 38 years. John number 6, he was multiplying the bread, and he talked about communion. People took it literally. They went away from him. And John 7, that we did recently, went to the Feast of Booths, or Tabernacles.
Went in a hoodie.
Where he went in a hoodie. Nobody recognized him. And he said he is the light of the world. And there were some controversies going around him. Nicodemus tried to stand up for him. That's more or less what we've gone through already. You can, of course, just check the previous episodes and all of that. And John chapter 8 starts, and it's very interesting, because my Bible, my NIV Kids Visual Study Bible, if you want to know exactly which one, it says here that the earliest manuscripts and many other ancient witnesses do not have John 7:53 to 8:11. And a few manuscripts include these verses completely or in part in different places in Luke and John.
Wow.
Which is interesting. And it's like John 5, those extra verses that were added later on. This was also likely the case for this part in John.
Interesting.
And do you know what it's about?
John 8 or that part?
That part in John 8.
No.
So, it's about a story. This was still where Jesus was at the Feast of Tabernacles. And he was at the temple court, so public place. The Pharisees and the scribes, or the teachers, they brought a woman caught in adultery. And they tell him, here in verse 5, in the law Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now what do you say? And they were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus went down and started to write on the ground with his finger, not even answering them, which is funny. And it's interesting because I found out that if Jesus said yes, the Romans would have been upset because they didn't allow the Jews to execute executions. And if he had said no, they would have accused him for not following the law of Moses.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Definitely.
Catch-22.
Catch-22, for sure. So they were putting him in a dilemma. It's a trap, literally. Like that guy said in Return of the Jedi.
It's a trap!
It's a trap! You know, and all the Star Wars fans out there.
That's what I saw in my head playing.
Oh, really? I'm so happy you got the reference. Well done. Nice.
Star Wars.
Anyway, they were setting a trap for him, so whether he said yes or no, he would have been in the wrong either way. And then instead of saying yes or no, he got up and said the first one that is without sin should cast the first stone. Who is without sin?
Tick, tick, tick. It is Jesus.
Jesus. Jesus never did anything wrong. He never missed the target. He always hit the target.
So also,
Metaphorically speaking, Jesus liked metaphors. We like
but
metaphors
it's
too.
also insane that we believe that he never sinned. Well, we believe anything that's recorded in history, but it's like insane to think that like he never sinned, because we're so used to like that's like the 1% of the 1 of the 1 of the 1 of the 1 of the infinite 1%. If you think about it, he didn't sin.
That's true. There's billions of people, and out of all of them, he's the only one that never sinned. So technically, he said that he's the one who can qualify to stone her.
Yes.
And what happened was the oldest to the youngest started walking away. And then they left her alone, and Jesus asks her, "Where are your accusers?" And she says, "There's no one there." And he says, "Neither do I accuse you, neither do I condemn you. Now go and sin no more." Which is really beautiful, because it shows how Jesus can look at us, he knows we've all sinned, and then he chooses grace and says, "I do not condemn you, now go and sin no more."
And that's also a form of compassion.
Definitely compassion. And he admits that what she did was wrong, because he calls it sin.
Yes.
But then he also reminds her, "Now sin no more," which is a message of repentance.
Yes.
So he handles it really, really well. And what I want to ask you is, that part where they just bring the woman, were they right?
Okay. How did you ask it last time? Because it was really interesting. So, what's the verses that you referred to? One was
Leviticus 20 verse 10,
yes,
and Deuteronomy 22 verses 22 to 24.
and both in those verses they talk about the law. And when you go and read about the law, it's if you go read properly, when a man and a woman marries, they become one, and that means if one does adultery, then that means because they're one, both of them actually needs to be stoned.
Yeah. So when they both committed adultery, then they were both guilty of it.
So if you're married, and let's say your spouse, significant other, does adultery, that means you also did adultery, even though you weren't directly part of it.
It's the two people that actually committed the act of adultery. Those two people that actually did it, they had to be stoned.
Those two people.
Yeah, according to the Mosaic law.
So it's not the husband.
If the husband is innocent and he didn't commit adultery, then he's obviously not condemned.
Okay.
So if it was his wife and she did it with another man, then that man and his wife would be guilty.
Okay.
And according to the Mosaic law, they had to be stoned. And in just a quick recap on what Leviticus is, it's the book dedicated to the Levi tribe. And they were priests that were like the middleman between the nation and God, who sacrificed animals to God to atone for their sins. And it's a very bloody book because it talks about sacrifices the entire time. And then Deuteronomy means duet, means two. Nomos is the Greek word for law, so it's a second law. And that's just basically another book where Moses gave his very long, 34 chapters, farewell speech before he died, spoilers, and they went to the promised land. And those two talk a lot about the laws, those two books. And in both of them, as we said, both had to go and be stoned so that that sin can be purged from the people.
Because it takes two people to sin with adultery, not just one.
Yeah.
So, and with this, they're only referring to the woman and not woman and man.
Yeah.
So they're just like caught the woman in the act and it's just like, okay, we take you, we're onto something else, that you're safe now, guy. It's like,
so
we got your back.
They might have known him.
Might have known him.
It's not for sure. We're just speculating.
But did they drag her in the act? Like they caught her in the act and then they took her to Jesus?
Maybe.
It
No,
just says
that's
that
what I'm
they
asking.
caught her in the act of adultery. It says, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery." It doesn't say who caught her.
Yeah, but they caught her in the act, which means they were there while it was
They were
happening,
busy.
took her, left the guy, dragged her to Jesus, and was like, hey, she did something wrong. But also, what's the thing if you see something being done wrong and you don't do anything to fix it, like you're also doing it?
You're tolerating.
Yeah.
it.
So they tolerated the man and they, what's the other word? Persecuted the woman. But they tolerated the man and
Or
left him alone.
accused the woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this just shows that they didn't follow the law exactly right. And
so they're already in trouble, actually.
And they just did this to trick Jesus. And we don't know what he wrote, but maybe he wrote Deuteronomy 22 in the sand. He's like, I know the context. You guys got it wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know what he wrote.
That just gives a sense of humor, though.
Just gives a sense of humor, maybe.
Yeah, but with our speculation as well is because in the previous chapter they also like accused him of not being literate. So I think that him writing in the sand is actually also like proving he is literate because he was writing something.
Exactly. So that also proves that point that he wasn't uneducated. We know he wasn't uneducated.
No, it was not.
And this was just another proof of it. So in this case, they tried to trick him, but Jesus was brilliant. And he said, the first one God sent should cast the stone. And that's basically the first 11 verses of John chapter 8.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything else about it?
No.
Okay.
That's about it.
Awesome.
Ooh, actually, you've actually said there's another word for adultery, but it's actually for when it's like people who are single.
Okay, so she committed adultery. She was either married with someone else and then she had adultery with another man. But fornication is when two people that are not married have sex outside of marriage. And adultery is when you cheat on your spouse.
Okay.
If I can put it that way. There's a link in the description. You can go check it out to know the difference between the two. Anyway, so from verse 12, it talks about dispute over Jesus' testimony. And here he says that he is the light of the world. And again, Jesus is very clever because at this feast, in the previous chapter, there was water. And he said, I'm the living water. So he uses the environment and compares himself to that as a good metaphor because he is like living water.
Painting a picture.
Say again?
Painting a picture so that we can understand, because we don't understand heavenly things if we struggle to understand earthly things. As they said in John chapter 3. So it was 3. Okay, cool.
Well put. And here he says he's the light of the world. And there were 16 golden bowls that they used with oil that was in the forecourt of the temple that the woman used to make light. So it was kind of like an oil lamp. And Jesus then says, I am the light of the world. And if you walk with him, you will never walk in darkness. And this makes me of a verse in Psalms, the longest Psalm, 119, verse 105. It says, your word is a lamp unto my feet. So right now we've got 1, 2, 3 lamps in this shot, if you're wondering, and 1 LED light. And Jesus says he is like that. If you think about it, a lamp, like an oil lamp that you would carry like this, it would only illuminate the area just around you. So you know what's going on right here, but you're still walking in the light the entire time. You will never walk in darkness. And he compares himself to being the light of the world. And he says that his testimony is true because the Father is always with him. And there always need to be at least 2 people to testify of the same thing. And they ask him, who is your father? Why do you think they asked that?
Because they're again trying to catch him with something. But it's like okay, so again they probably think earthly. So then it's like, oh, it's this guy that was with Mary, but it's actually Jesus' father is Father above, which is God. And then Jesus says, my father is your father, but apparently it's like how you're acting now is not the same.
Exactly.
It's not the same father.
So we're going to get to that part. And Jesus says that if you knew me, you would know my Father also. Basically what you said. And he said these things in the court where everyone could see him. And it says he wasn't arrested. His time had not yet come, which refers to the cross, as we have discovered earlier in the episodes. And they have a dispute over who Jesus is. And then he says, I'm going away, but where I'm going, you cannot go. What is he talking about?
Going up.
Going up where? Going back west. Oh, that's going back west, not going up west. Never
Going
mind.
up north
Going up north.
North is
not a
that
song like that.
to the.
Well, if you think about north, south, west, and east, is actually left, right, front, or back, never up or down.
On a horizontal plane, yes.
But anyway,
Anyways,
what did he mean by where I am going, you
Yeah.
cannot go?
well, that time they couldn't go to space. We've been to space, and clearly it's not space; it's heaven.
Okay, so he's talking about his ascension.
His ascension to
His
heaven.
ascension. So that's when Jesus literally ascended back to heaven in Luke 24. And they didn't understand what he was saying, but he says, I'm not of this world, you are of this world, I'm from above, and you will indeed die in your sins. And they just straight up ask you, who are you? Verse 25. And he says, I've been telling you since the beginning who I am, and they didn't understand.
No, who are you?
And then he says, I've been telling you.
No, who are you?
I told you. I told you, John. This is who I am. But they didn't believe in him because they were very hard-hearted. And he says that the one who has sent him is trustworthy. And they did not understand that he was talking about the Father. And Jesus said, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has told me. Verse 28. What does he mean by when you have lifted up the Son of Man?
So, spoiler alert, that is him being put on the cross and they lift up the cross, which is enthroning him as well because they've also put a crown on him, the crown of thorns. So they're actually talking about his death.
So Jesus is constantly foreshadowing, which is awesome. He's just dropping them hints and they don't get it right away.
Back then it was foreshadowing, now it's just spoilers.
Now it's just spoilers. So Jesus was talking about his crucifixion, and I've noticed as we're journeying through John, he talks about it quite a lot.
Yeah.
So he's
quite
really
often.
hammering on how important this is, and it really is an important thing when he was glorified on the cross. And then, of course, the next part talks about the dispute over whose children Jesus' opponents are. And then many people actually started to believe in him. And then Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, verse 31, you really are my disciple. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And they took it literally and said, but wait, we're Abraham's descendants. When have we ever been slaves? What are we going to be freed of?
Ooh.
What do you think of that?
So they're thinking again to one direction. Well, Jesus is thinking of the bigger picture because he knows more. And being set free is actually from sins, because when you sin, you are a slave to sin. And he's Son of God, and we're also the children of God. So you could also say we're also God's sons, daughters, but usually, but it's a son and father relationship. And it says that a slave is only temporary. You don't have to always abide what's in the house, while the son always abides the father.
That's very true. Jesus does say that a bit later. And
Yeah.
what's weird is they say, we are Abraham's children and never have been slaves of anyone. Is that true?
Slaves of... No, I don't think. I don't
Is
think.
that true?
No, I don't
What
think.
they just said?
Eyebrows, eyebrows.
Sweat starting to drip down. Is that really true?
No.
When were they slaves?
Do you know?
Exodus.
Egypt.
I mean-
yeah, that's when they were slaves.
For
Abraham was
400 years.
Abraham was way before that.
No, true.
Yeah, so definitely Exodus, because timeline wise, Abraham was before, and that's the person who talked to God, and God said, "You'll have as many children as the stars and the sand," and that's basically where the tree branches went very ballistic, and then you get Exodus, and they were enslaved because of the Pharaoh working for it, and then 400 years
in slavery.
400
That's a really
years.
long
That's a
time.
long time. I
So-
did not know that.
It sounds kind of funny that they sort of forgot about the fact that for many years their own people were enslaved for 400 years, and God saved them from the house of slavery, which is the meaning of Egypt. And Jesus' exodus is saving us from the slavery of sin. Haralao.
Wow.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus is like Moses in that sense. And he says that the truth will set them free. As you said, that the slave is not there forever, but the son is. And Jesus is, later on, he reveals that he is the truth, which we will get to in John 14. And he says that he sets us free from sin. And they say, but Abraham is our father. In verse 39, he says, if you really were, then you wouldn't want to kill me, and you would have been happy about me. So he's again addressing the elephant in the room, where he says that they wanted to kill him. He knew what was in man, and then he right out said it, I know you want to kill me. He said it at least twice.
And he also said beforehand that actually wanted to kill him twice as well, or stone him. Right?
No, that's at the end of the chapter.
At the end of the
You
chapter.
spoiler boy, that's at the end of the chapter.
Wait a minute.
We're not even at verse 59 yet.
50.
At what verse are we now?
We are now at 42.
Okay, we're getting close.
Slow down, boy. Anyway, he says that if God was really your father, then you would love me. For I have come here from God. I have not come on my own, but God sent me. And then he says, why are you unable to understand what I am saying? And he makes a very big statement. Verse 44, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Yet because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me.
Sure.
Jesus
Wow.
said what?
What did he say?
What did he just say?
So, devil means accuser or deceiver.
Mm-hmm.
He also goes by the titles Satan, Beelzebub, and so forth. There's a very big study that we can go about Satan.
Yeah, also book sounds very funny though.
It does sound very funny. I think it's more Beelzebul. Might have just mispronounced it. And in the description, you can get all the notes about the references about the devil and what he's like and everything. But just to say that in Revelation, it very clearly says that at the end of time, the devil, along with his demons, will be thrown into the lake of fire. So he's already condemned. He's going to lose anyway. And the devil is trying to deceive us. And that's why we have to fight the good fight.
Because he doesn't want to be alone there
Doesn't want to be alone. And hell is also hell for the devil.
as well.
Yeah. Many people might think that the devil is in charge of hell, but that's so untrue. Because the devil is also going to be tortured there.
Yeah, that's why he's here and not in hell now, currently.
Exactly. So the Bible actually says he is still working in the world because many people are still being deceived. We still live in a broken world. But at the end of time, the devil will be thrown into the lake of fire, and that will be the end of him.
So if the devil was in hell, then that means that we'll have, like, if he switcheroo places, then that means when he was there, we would have had much more peace here. And
Wait,
places
what?
deception.
Are you saying if he was actually in hell, like a lot of people believe, we would have a lot of peace now?
No, it's just
No.
no, he's actively busy here in this broken world.
Yes,
That's
he
just a
is.
thought. That's just a thought.
He is
now.
actively busy in the world. That's why the world is still broken. But at the end of the time, when Jesus comes back, the devil and everyone who didn't believe in Jesus, they will be thrown into the lake of fire. And the devil and the demons will all be burned forever and ever in excruciating pain.
And they're scared,
Yeah.
which is why they're working so hard now.
So that's about the devil. You can read all about him in the description. We've got all our notes here. And I just want to finish off here with the last part of the chapter. And he asks, can any one of you prove me guilty of sin? I'm telling you the truth. Why don't you believe me? Verse 46. And he basically just asked them, why don't you believe me? It's so obvious and they still don't believe. And the last part, it is Jesus' claims about himself. They accuse him of being a Samaritan and demon-possessed, which is another way of saying you're an enemy and a lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus denies, I do not have a devil, I do not have a demon, in different translations. And he is there to honor the Father. And he says, very truly I tell you, whoever obeys my word will never see death. And they say, now we know that you have a devil because Abraham died and the prophets died. And how can you say that those who believe in you will never die? Who do you think you are? And Jesus says, verse 54, if I glory myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know him, I know him. If I said I did not, I would be a liar just like you. Your father rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. And that always puzzled me. But then I learned that according to Jewish tradition, that God revealed to Abraham the end times. And that's what Jesus might be referring to here. Another way is Genesis 17:17 to interpret this is the fact that Abraham laughed at the fact of getting a child at a very old age. The kind of laughter that's out of joy. Laughter of joy. That's another way of looking at that part. And they said, you're not even 50 years old, which is true, because he was about 30 or 33 years old.
Our estimation.
No, that's actually in theology. It was either 30 or 33 by this time. And that's almost the entire thing that they actually said that was true. You're not even 50 years old. That's right, but the rest not so right. And he says that very truly, I tell you, before Abraham was, I am. And it's so cool because in the other parts he says, I am who I am twice, which is a direct reference to Exodus 3, the name God revealed to Moses in the burning bush. I am who I am is God's personal name. He just is.
Wow.
Which is a really awesome name because no matter what, God is always outside of time. He's in the past, present, and future. Therefore, God can truly say, I am who I am.
He's always constant.
Always constant, and he just is. It's a very deep concept to think about, and when we get to Exodus 3, we will dive into that nicely. But Jesus saying this, I am who I am, he is actually saying, I am God.
Yes.
And that's when they get upset. They pick up stones and they want to stone him, but Jesus just slips away. And just my final thoughts to end off, that in chapter 9, as he was walking away, he sees a blind man, heals him, and then I found out that all of that happened on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So they wanted to stone the woman and Jesus on a Sabbath. And then I'm thinking, wait, wouldn't that have been considered work?
And then that means they actually disobeyed.
Yeah, if they stoned.
Yeah.
So there they were also very sketchy because they literally just did those things because they thought the woman was wrong, they wanted to trap him, and they thought Jesus was blaspheming, calling himself God, but he was speaking the truth.
So it might be all bark with no bite.
Hippopotamus.
A what?
All bark with no bite.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so that means to actually call out that it's they can't really stone because then they will be disobeying the law on the Sabbath.
It's like you're all words, no action.
Yeah.
But they were being hippopotamuses.
Hippopotamuses.
Mm-hmm.
And that is John chapter 8.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
It was a really cool chapter. I'm looking forward to the next one.
I'm really looking forward to the next one, which I mentioned briefly. So please stick around for John chapter 9, one of my absolute favorites, and we will check you in the next episode.
Share, like, subscribe, comment a question if you have any.